Welcome back, everyone. Mr. Talbott here for you again. We're going to be finishing up our state building in the Americas topic. In our last video, we kind of looked at what was going on with the Maya and with the Aztec in kind of Central America and Mexico. We're going to kind of then go both directions in this video, looking at what was going on up further in North America and also down in South America. Remember, we're going to use this to supplement our notes that we already have from the readings that we've done. So the next big group of kind of the three probably most famous early American civilizations is going to be the Inca. Very similar to the Aztec, it's going to be an empire, and it also starts pretty close to when the Aztec Empire gets going in the early 1400s. Now, there were different kind of kingdoms before. If we kind of look at our map over here, you can kind of see kind of northern Chile, central Peru kind of being where it was based, but then when it really kind of is expanding to the empire it will be known for, is really right on the eve of the conquistadors arriving a generation later. So the guy that kind of is going to start uniting this area, his name is going to be Pachacuti. He's over here to our left side, and his name translates to destroyer. He's divided his empire into 4 different states, and they're each going to have their own governor. And overall, the Inca and Pachacuti, if you were being conquered by the Inca and you just submitted, he was pretty chill with you, kind of would give you a lot of rights and protection. So it'll be pretty similar to Genghis Khan and the Mongols when we get there. Also similar with Genghis Khan and the Mongols, if you resisted, there were all sorts of terrible things they were going to do. They were going to, if they didn't kill you in battle, they were going to throw you into a cell and throw some poisonous snakes in there with you and all sorts of stuff like that. So different from the Aztec that required the tribute of people and stuff and money. All the Inca leadership really asked was that you were willing to put in some work to benefit the empire. And so we would see they're going to be pretty tremendous architects. They would do a lot of really cool stuff. They're going to build a road system of over 25,000 miles kind of all through the Andes Mountains in South America. They're also going to be developing what's called terrace farming, and kind of you can see you're trying to build a farm on the side of a mountain. It's kind of tough. So they would build these kind of terraces, tiers out, and they would grow different things. And they kind of figured out that if you plant certain crops together, things go well. So they're pretty advanced agriculturally there. They also realized that, you're high up in the mountains, it's cold. So one of the cool things about the terrace is because they're made of the stone that they moved, be exposed to the sun, and that would warm it up and help keep the crops warm at night up in the mountains. So really, really smart, advanced civilization. And it's kind of incredible all the stuff they were able to do. They've got these perfectly carved stones that there's no mortar in between them. They're just so well fit together. They stay where they're at, even in spite of earthquakes and that kind of thing in the Pacific Rim. They're able to do all of these things despite they didn't have a written language. They had these things that were called quipus, and kind of it's a good thing to kind of look up in Google, and it should have included a picture of it. It's basically a series of strings attached to other strings, and the different knots represented different stuff. Now, unfortunately, since it's made of string, we don't really have a lot of the complete ones still, so we know it was used for kind of keeping track of accounting type of things. There's some scholarship now that is starting to think that maybe the different knots sometimes also made syllables, and it was a form of language. And if we're able to figure that out and that's true, could really unlock a lot of early American history and more stuff about the Inca and the people that were there beforehand. So the sense of being the largest empire in the Americas, but again, it's not going to be there very long. It's pretty much going to be wiped out, within a generation of becoming this big empire, because civil war is going to break out between one Inca ruler brother and his brother, and eventually one of them is going to win. But a lot of the Inca die in this. There's a lot of strife still and bad blood, and then this European crazy-looking whites and fair-skinned guy shows up. And he's got guns and he's got horses, and he's kind of able to play into the fact that the Inca Empire is not really united. So a lot of kind of what we saw with the Aztec, where that internal strife, the Spaniards are going to be able to play off of. Same thing's going to happen here when the Spaniards stay. And we're talking about the conquistadors in later units. But I wanted to kind of focus this topic on the incredible things that these civilizations were doing. And we see Probably most famously of the Inca is Machu Picchu, another one of the new wonders of the world. So, shifting gears now, we're going to move up to what is today the United States and northern Mexico. And we have kind of the Pueblo people. And the most famous civilization and kind of creation we're going to see there is Mesa Verde. It's a national park in the United States today. It's in Colorado. These people are going to be kind of called the cliff dwellers. And you'll see they're around from about 500 to 1200 CE. So they're going to kind of fade away before any European involvement. Just if you take some time and look at the what they were able to carve. And so this wasn't carved in stone, this was kind of built, but then using the natural structure as well. Obviously great for defense, using your environment in a really, really intelligent and smart way. Again, they're doing this as well without a written language. And they're also going to be involved with trade with other tribes and kind of civilizations nearby. So pretty advanced civilization we see in what is today the United States. So it wasn't just taking place in Mexico and in South America. It's happening in what is today the United States as well. The struggle with these pictures, I actually, when I was much younger, got to go to Mesa Verde, and the scale of these buildings and just kind of how intricate it all is, and it's really, really impressive to see. Now, scholars aren't really sure, but for some reason, the Mesa Verde people and the Pueblo people are going to kind of leave the cliff dwellings and kind of go somewhere else. Most people think probably a bad drought hit the area and they had to go somewhere else to kind of get their agriculture going, but we don't really know. The other big civilization from what is today the United States is best seen in Cahokia, which is just across from St. Louis. It's in Illinois. But as part of kind of look here at these different mound building kind of Mississippian culture that you'd see all over the place throughout, the Southeast and kind of into the upper plains here. But again, Cahokia is the best preserved and was the biggest city. In fact, Cahokia was one of the biggest cities in the world. Like in Mesa Verde, they're going to kind of leave around 1200 C, again, around about the same time. We think for environmental reasons, but again, we're not totally sure because, again, we don't have that written language to kind of go off of. But at the time, there were about 20,000 people in Cahokia, which today doesn't sound big, but that made it bigger than London, bigger than Paris at the time. So really, really advanced civilization. And you kind of see some of the earthen mounds, and a lot of them are still there, and we'll see that in our next slide. Now, in the Cahokia system, kind of a good news, bad news night. On one hand, the bad news is, especially if you weren't born to a good class, it's a very rigid class structure, similar to kind of what we saw in South Asia and India. The class you're born into, that's pretty much the way it's going to be. On the positive side, for women, if you were born into kind of an upper class, you could even be a ruler of some of these Cahokia cities, and that would kind of pass inheritance and kind of things down there. So again, kind of some similarity we see with the Maya there, with women having more say in how things are going. But again, we're not really sure, but for some reason, they kind of left the area between 1450, 1600, and kind of the peak, though, was in 1200. So they leave a little bit after the Mesa Verde began, before the Europeans are going to arrive. And this is Cahokia today. So again, if you see, we got our car here to get some scale of, how big it is. All right, closing out our state building in the Americas, some continuity and change that we see. We don't know when these people got here. They kind of started the hunter-gatherer way, but then eventually they kind of become what we call sedentary, stationary civilizations based around agriculture. They're super-duper successful in agriculture, corn or maize being one of the things that's going to travel all over the world. We talked about the terrace farming with the Inca that was really advanced. So we see environment use there. We definitely saw with Mesa Verde and Cahokia using their environments, but then also having to leave because the environment's going to change on them. At least that's what we think. The incredible things we saw them build, I think it's important to point out, they did that without having what we call beasts of burden, like a mule or a donkey or a horse, those kind of things. They didn't have that. So they had to do this all kind of by manual physical labor. And then I think we sometimes have this idea that the Americas, they developed this stuff and then they were kind of the same until Europeans arrived. What we've just learned is that that's not the case. The Inca, the Aztec, the Cahokia, the Mesa Verde, they were all going through these big, big changes during and prior to the European arrival.